to my channel. This is G Held Designs, and we are going to do a quick activity today. And what I mean by quick is it really shouldn't take that long to do it. It may take me longer to explain it than it does for me to actually create the thing. So we will be creating key fobs today, and this is the short one. We will also do a lanyard, and I don't have one on me right now, but you will see the final result with that. So these are really great items to make to give as gifts. So if you have scraps of fabric or yardage, you can make these in no time. I gave these out as gifts to my staff. That was over 100 staff members, and I basically used my stash and I used scraps to create them. So this was part of a dress that I made. I had leftover fabric and instant key fob. Same way with making lanyards. So let's get started on what we need. Of course, we need fabric. This has been cut by the width of the fabric, and it is 4 inches wide, and the length is by the width of the fabric right now. I have 2 pieces because one is going to be a lanyard and one will be 4 key fobs. Depending on the pattern that you follow or who you follow will depend on the length of the key fob. So I'm going to use a standard 11 inch, but some people will go as high as maybe 13. You want the area to be wide enough so that when you create it, your hand slides through it. So I have relatively big hands, and I want my hands to be able to slide right through there to be able to hold on to it. Now this could be a little tighter. It's actually longer than my traditional ones, but I want that to be a little snug for me and still be able to get my hand through it. Do I usually use it? No, but if I need to, because I'm out somewhere, I want to be able to hold on to that. So I need to consider the length. So the smallest I would go is 11 inches. So again, you could go to 11 inches, or it could be as high as 13, 15. It just depends on what you like. So we have our fabric. In order to get that stiff look, we need some sort of interfacing or stabilizer. The one that I am using, you can see the little dots here. So this is fusible. One side has the dots, the other side is smooth. So you can use this type, or you could use the kind that isn't fusible and you can still get away with that. That's up to you. I have a lot of non-fusible that I do use up for these projects because I'm not using them for anything else, and we don't waste product. That's just me. So I have my interfacing, I have my fabric. Of course, we need a machine, we need thread, our bobbin. Usually I try to match the fabric to the thread. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. We also need hardware. So here are the little key fob keychains that you can purchase off of Amazon. I will provide the link a little later after the video where you can grab these. I like the ones that have the teeth here because the teeth are what helps to grab your fabric. There's only teeth on one side. They look like fangs. And then the other side is smooth. And we'll talk about what we do to make sure that we grab it in a minute. If I'm making the lanyard, which I love to make for my keys at work, I use this sort of swivel hook because when it's around my neck, I don't want it to get twisted. You absolutely could use these, but I prefer the swivel hook, and then it allows me to clip and unclip my keys as I need to give them out. Now, if they're my work keys, I'm absolutely using a stronger swivel, but I grabbed the first one that I saw upstairs, and this is the one, so this is the one we're using today. We need scissors. We will need an iron and an ironing board. We will need this. It's like pliers. You could use regular pliers, but this is specific for what we can use. You can buy it in a set. You don't have to buy them all the time because once you buy it once or twice, you don't need them again unless you keep losing them like me. These sit snug in here like this, and then we clamp them closed. Clearly I won't do it now because there's no sense in wasting one of these. So let's get started. We are going to, because I'm going to make the lanyards and the key fobs, if I have scraps, I will cut them 4 by 11. If I don't have scraps and I'm using yardage, I will cut it by the width of I will cut the width 4 inches, and I will just have the length go from selvage to selvage, right? And then we'll cut those selvages off. I'm going to fuse the fabric. The interfacing is a little shorter than the fabric. So this is 3.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. If you are using the kind that I used, I just measured my fabric. I knew that my fabric was about 42 inches long, and so I cut these 42 inches long. It just depends on the type of interfacing you buy and how wide it is. But you at least want it to go the length. And I think I made this a little bit longer just because I'd rather have too much than not to have enough. Because this is 3.5 inches wide, it's not going to go edge to edge, which is what I want. I don't have to have it go edge to edge because they're going to go in the center, and I don't necessarily need all that bulk. So that means I can get more pieces out of my interfacing if I do it this way. It saves a little bit of interfacing. So I'm just going to pop this down. You can see I cut it just a little bit too long, which is fine. And I'm just giving it a quick press just to hold it in place. I often find that ironing the interfacing side up doesn't work as well for me, so I prefer to do it with the fabric side up, but I just want to make sure it stays in place. Now I can press everything nice and neatly and know that nothing's going to shift. Oops. And of course, if you get your iron on the edge of this, it will absolutely stick to your iron, and then you'll have to clean that part of your iron off. Ask me how I know, because I just did it. Okay, we'll cut this excess off because I don't need it. And then let's do the other one. Now my interfacing sometimes will shrink on me. Okay, remember I got a little bit on the bottom of my iron. Okay, let me get that off of there. If it does that, then you just take your iron and go back over it again. And then you can just kind of pull it out a little bit if it tends to shrivel up. So sometimes the interfacing will do it, sometimes it won't. No harm, no foul. And let's do the other one. This one's a little more challenged, so I'm just going to press it out a little bit first just to get rid of some of those wrinkles. And then let's add this piece. And again, oh, I think what I did was I cut the selvage off. I think that's what happened. So I'm just using this to hold that interfacing in place until I flip it over. So I don't have to iron it a lot to get that to happen. And you'll see this one wasn't as short because it just dawned on me that I cut the interfacing off. I mean, I cut the selvage off of the other one. You'll be a little lazy here. You don't have to do a lot of ironing on your interfacing because the glue will melt away and then, you know, it'll stop sticking. So you don't want to over press it, especially if you don't spend a lot of money on your interfacing. So I'm just kind of smoothing that out so I don't get that little rippled effect that I got before. Okay. Move my pieces over here, move my iron over there. Okay. So one of these is going to be the lanyard, and then one is going to be will be used for the key fobs. So I think I'll use this one for the lanyard. They're going to be made the same exact way. I am going to cut off this selvage, and the reason I'm cutting it off is because often when, depending on especially the type of fabric you use, the selvage is a little more tightly woven than your fabric, and it will react differently. Plus, who wants this raw cream edge on all this red and black? So we cut that off. We're going to do the same thing for all 5 that we're going to make. But we're going to start with this. And I know what I forgot. We need clips. You can use pins. I'm using clips. So we're going to fold this in half. Because the interfacing is in there, it is going to give us like a papery type feel. And that's going to allow our fabric to be a little more crisper than it would be if we didn't use it. Again, it's going to give us structure. And I just want to clip it enough. You can iron it if you want to. I don't necessarily feel the need to iron it. I just want to give it a good finger press. And that's why I clip it and just let it set for a second. You could draw a line down the center if you like. I just prefer to press it. And then I turn my edges to the center. And I give it a good finger press. Can you believe it? This Mr. Softy truck is out already. And so we fold it like that. So let me show it to you from the inside. I just took the raw edges, folded them to the center, and then I fold this in half. And then I can reclip to hold that in place. We'll go down a little further. We're going to repeat the process. So if you are a beginner to this, there's nothing wrong with taking a pencil and drawing a line right down the center. This is 4 inches for the fabric. You don't have to worry about the interfacing being 3.5. The fabric is 4. So half of 4 is 2. So all you have to do is measure a 2-inch. Measure 2 inches in. That'll be your center. You could fold it in half. That would be your center. So it's up to you to determine how you want to find the center, but those are just different ways that you can do it. Okay. We'll come here. And again, I just, with the right interfacing, and this is just medium weight fusible interfacing, I will use from time to time Pellin 808, or I'll use 808, Pellin 808. That's usually the weight that I use whenever I am doing crafts. And the reason I pause for a minute is because you can also use Pellin 809. It's the same product. It's just that 809 is wider. So 809 will go the width of usually your fabric, whereas 808 is about half of that, so it's about 20 inches wide. opposed to, opposed to the regular one, which is about almost 40 to 42 inches wide. But again, it's up to you which one you want to use. It depends on the product, on the projects. It depends on, what you're making in terms of how wide you want that fabric to be. That stabilizer to be. Often we're using stabilizers for collars. We're using stabilizers for small projects that usually aren't wider than 20 inches. So that's why there's two different sizes. So it's there if you need it, and it's there if you don't. So we're going all the way down. And we're going to do the same thing because we're making a similar product. It's just going to be a little bit different with the other one. So we're doing them both the same way. Because I believe in working smarter, not harder. So I want the clips in place to hold everything in place. And then here it is, everything clipped in place. I am going to chain stitch this, so that's why I want to get the other one done as well. Okay. Let me pull back for a second. And of course you would not have, yes you do. We should always have a pencil over here. Just to show you, you could take your fabric, let's get the right side that we want to use. We could line up the 2 inches, so from the edge in, and we could use our pencil or marking tool and just draw a line. Okay, so it's the same purpose as if I would have folded this over. Now, knowing me, my measurements and my eyeballing might be a little off. Oh, no, I did it good. Was still fold in the center. So it's up to you which way you want to do this. It's totally a preference. And really, the hardest part is this. So just getting everything to the center, lining it up, folding it over, and clipping is the hardest part of making this. I didn't draw a line all the way because I'll just continue to fold, but you absolutely could have gone the length of this with your drawing of a line if that's what you preferred. Draw on the interfacing because that's going to be on the inside. Don't draw on your fabric because then that line will be on the outside. Will you see it? Probably not, but there's no need to have the line on the fabric. Okay. And again, we're making the key fob and we're making, it would be nice if I line this up to make sure that my fold is there. So there are times when I am just cranking these out and I will eyeball them and be just about right. And then there are times when I need to make sure that what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing. Okay, so these should be, we're folding a 4-inch wide strip in half. So folding it in half gives us a 2-inch wide strip. Then taking those centers, if you will, and folding those in, if we leave it the way it is right here, this would be 2 inches wide, or should be. By folding this again, it now should be 1 inch. So if you're getting your key fob hardware, you want to make sure your hardware is 1 inch. If it is 3/4 of an inch, no harm, no foul. You just need to make your lanyard or key fobs a little thinner. So then you would start with a thinner width in order to get the final thing to be 3/4 of an inch. So 2 sides, 3/4 of an inch would be 1.5 inches if I open it up, because I would be measuring this at 3/4 and this at 3/4. So together, that would be 1.5. So then if I opened it up, that would be another times 2. So it would be about 3 inches. So I would need a 3-inch strip in order to get it to fit into a 3/4 inch key fob hardware piece. So you can figure it out. You can do the math to figure it out if you buy the wrong size, or if you're gifted a size that is not the width that you needed it to be. So everything is stitched together. You need a cup of coffee. We bring in our machine. We are going to stitch a 1/4 inch down the open side. I think I want to use my 1/4 inch foot for this because I don't trust myself. So you could use your regular foot. I have a 1/4 inch foot, which will guarantee that I keep a straight line. And the straighter the line, the better the look. The better the look for me, the more pleased I am, especially if I'm giving this as a gift. Let me move my needle back over because I don't have a long line to go through for that. Okay. Let me turn my stitches up a little bit. And I'm just going to go all the way down. I could get a foot that will give me a closer look than the one that's here, so I don't have to use a 1/4 inch. And I'll show you that with the other one. It's up to you, because I can use my foot to give me 1/8 of an inch. And then if I don't like the 1/4 inch, I could just do another stitch right next to it. Sounds like. Okay, right to the end, and I'm just going to sew off that. Okay, I'll put all of these back in my bag because somebody will knock them all off on the floor. Okay, so I'll show you right now. This is the one side, and you can see how far away from the edge is. Now remember, we folded it all the way up here, so you're not going to see the raw edge in here, and it won't matter to some people, but if it matters to you, you can come a little closer to the edge. But that's just one side. We're going to do the other side, but I want to do this one first. This one I'm going to use a closer stitch just so you can see the difference. Because I'm not using my guide for this one, I need to pay attention to where the foot is hitting and try to keep it as straight as possible. And then let's see, this one, you can see how close I came that second time. And if you like that look better, then you can go with that look. Okay, so either one, it doesn't matter. I am going to cut this off. So what I am going to say is, if I went in this direction to sew, I like to go in the opposite direction because sometimes our fabric will shift, and because it shifts, what happens is this will help it to shift back the same way and keep it straight, so you have less waves. So even in quilting, when I'm doing certain things, if I find myself going in the same direction, or sometimes you'll see it in the pattern, they'll tell you to go in one direction for one row and to go in another direction for another row. And that's just because sometimes your fabric shifts underneath your foot, underneath the machine's foot. And what happens is it will cause it to give you like this wave underneath of it that may not be pretty. Okay, so I went a little closer on that one, but like I said, if you don't like this, you can absolutely, go to that edge, or you could double it up. That's up to you. But see how nice and flat that is, and see how nice and flat that is. Sometimes you'll get a ripple just because you didn't do it that way. Sometimes it doesn't do it at all, and you're like, well, why did I go through that effort? But better safe than sorry. Let's do this last one. Okay, and kaboom. We have a nice flat piece. Now, one of these, I just need to remember which one it was going to be, and it really doesn't matter. The only thing I was considering with this was this piece right here. This one, because of the type of print that I use, has these little splashes, and then the other one is straight red and black. So I didn't get any of those splashes in there. So I want to use this one for my lanyard. I'm going to cut off my edges of thread. I'm going to make sure everything is nice and straight. And then we're going to take this and just go through one, just so I catch it. Okay, these two ends are still open, and then I'm going to close these up using my machine. When I use my machine to do this, I like to go back and forth over it just to make sure that I reinforce it. So a couple back stitches will make that lovely. If I can't get this, all those little threads that are there, I will use my lighter and just burn those threads just a little, just the edges, not the actual stitches, just to kind of clean that up. Okay. Now, once this is done, I'm going to turn that inside out. I can twist my swivel clip And I'm going to get it right in, let me show you. Here is the 2 edges that I sewed together. I'm going to get that right in there. I want to bring it up just a little bit because I want to catch those edges so you don't see them. So see how I'm bringing it up just a little bit, so it's a little off. I don't want it quite in the ditch, just a little bit. Whoops. So it's about maybe about 3/4 of an inch. So you can see the stitch line here, and right in there you can see those. I want to stitch over those, and I don't want to stitch obviously on the hardware. That's why I'm moving it far enough up, and I want to make sure that I just kind of enclose those raw edges. Make sure my tails are back because I don't want those to get caught up. And we're going through a lot of fabric, so make sure that you're using a good strong needle to go through this fabric. But you're gonna see that my machine is gonna fight me, right? Because it's like, girl, why are you going through all this heavy fabric? And it's probably saying that with this dull needle, because somebody should have changed the needle. Okay, and then we'll get that and trim that out. Okay, so I went a little lower, so you'll still see, you can see those raw edges. So the next one is going to be right above those raw edges. So a little lower and a little higher. That way I know that I have those raw edges in there. It gives it a nice reinforcement. And again, do a little back stitching to hold it in place. Your snips may get a little closer than I got with your scissors, but again, you can use your lighter to get those little pieces off. Okay, but it enclosed it in there, so now you can't see those raw edges. Everything is tight. And, you know, I just don't know if I can have a flame on the video, so I just choose to do that part out of camera completely. Okay, so all those little threads are gone, and here is your lanyard. So the lanyard is ready to go for your keys. It is all done. It's going to fit about mid-chest. So I love using the width of the fabric. I don't have to add any extra things to it. So the lanyard is finished. That's how quick it is. So imagine like now if we were using this fabric for another lanyard, boom, that's how fast we could do it. And we know that I'm talking, so it's taking me longer. If I wasn't talking, I could absolutely pre-prep my fabric, cut out all of my widths of fabric, all that stash that I probably am not going to use, and I could absolutely make lanyards out of them. This is 4 inches, so 4 inches, a yard of fabric is 36 inches, so you could get approximately, if somebody cut the fabric correctly and if you don't mess up, you could get 9 lanyards out of a yard of fabric. Your interfacing could be a yard as well, like if you got the 809. So depending on that, you may spend, let's say, $5 for interfacing, and you may spend, let's say, $13 for fabric. So $18 would get you 9 lanyards plus the hardware. Let's add another $1 that we know that it doesn't cost for that. So 19. So let's say 20 bucks, right, for your thread, for your hardware, for the fabric, the interfacing, and then you have 9 lanyards from there, and then you determine your price from there for how much you want to make for the work that you've done. But easily enough, $5 would get you 45 on a $20 investment. And we know that we might charge a little bit more than 5, but just so that gives you some reference. For the key fobs, they're shorter because they're just wristlets. So I have, and I just need to measure that again to make sure. Okay, so this is 22. It is, what did I say? 42. This is 42. 44. So half of this is 22. And I can cut this because they're already done. Remember, we did all the stitching. And then I can fold this in half again. And again, if you want a larger key fob, you could. So it could look like this. I want it to be smaller. So I'm going to fold it in half. So I get 4 of these. And again, these are, right, usually about $5 a piece. So if we made 9 of the lanyards, 9 times 4 is 36 of these. And it's almost the same cost, except we're using more hardware. So now we need 36 of these. So depending on how much this costs, let's say $10, right? So if we add that, it's about $30 for all of those. And again, less than $1 to make these. And then you sell these for $5 a piece. It's a $4 profit on each one. Okay. Once everything is cut, we're going to take these and we're going to just stitch across them. That's going to help it to stay together, because what we found is that if you don't do it and you just attach the hardware, what happens is that and I'll show that to you in a minute, sometimes a piece will come out. So by stitching these together, it helps to avoid one of the sides coming out. And I can chain stitch this because again, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, but I'm allowing myself to just go back and forth, line them up, and go back and forth over there. Okay. I don't think I need my machine. I can slide that back a little bit. Don't even need those. So everything is together, right? We will cut off the excess thread. Oops. Now I could, if that was smart, I could just give this a rounded edge, and that will cut the thread as well. Just like that. Just so I don't have those points on there. Sometimes they like to stick out of the hardware. So if you just kind of cut those corners off a little bit, it'll help them from those edges from sticking out. So I really could have done that while I was cutting those excess threads off. One more. So I just cut it about a 1/4 inch from the edge, because I want those to go in the hardware. I don't want the stitch line right here to be outside. Okay, so it looks like this, and again, my hand can fit through it, and I have a big hand, so that means everybody else's hand can fit through it. And now here comes the fun part with the hardware. Okay, and let me show you these again. Here you can see with the hardware, these teeth, these little fangs. These are going to catch your fabric. If I flip this over, this side is smooth. So what happens is, if I didn't stitch these together, these two sides together, then when these went in there, what happened was when we were clamping them, sometimes the teeth go down, they don't go straight, depending on how fast you clamp them, how thick your fabric is. And so what happens is it catches the side that it's connected to, but it doesn't catch this side. And what happens is that if you didn't stitch these together, sometimes the side that it didn't catch would pop back out. So by stitching them together, you help to avoid that. So we're going to take our little plier tool that we use for this. Try to move that ring out of the way. You could take the ring off if it doesn't work well for you. So it sits in there like this. You're going to take the piece and place it inside of there. I like to hold it with my hands just to make sure it stays straight, because yeah, I can go crooked. And I like to just apply a little bit of pressure just to make sure that I can hold it, and that if it's not straight, I can kind of straighten it out a little bit before I give it a full clamp. Once it's straight, I can squeeze, and boom. I might need to do the corners a little just to make sure that it's nice and tight. And there we go. And it really shouldn't pull out. Keyword is shouldn't, but there's your key fob. And of course we can do the same thing with the other three. So again, it goes into that space. I'm going to give it a little bit of pressure just to make sure I can look at it, make sure it's straight, and then I can continue to give it the pressure that it needs. You don't need to like really clamp it hard, because sometimes you'll bend it, and you don't want to bend it too much. It may have a little bit of a dip, but you don't need a big dip. And then we'll come back and I'll show you those little threads, and then of course we'll get rid of those and our project will be finished. Okay, we'll set that up. Again, in here, I'm holding it so it doesn't come out. I'm setting this inside of there. Almost, it's going to sit. Make sure it's perfect, or as close to flat as I can get it. Push. If it's a little off. Now, I mean, if I'm way off, it's not going to, because of those teeth, unless I can figure out how to pry it back open, it's not going to allow me to slide it over. And I'll show you, for example, like right here, it's a little off. So this is like one of those ones that I might say to somebody, I'll give that to you for $1 shorter, just because, you know, it's a defect, right? And somebody will take it. And I've still made a profit because it only cost me $1 to make, right? Less than $1. So I can sell that a little bit cheaper, no harm, no foul, because I'm still making a profit off of my materials, my time. Okay, and then this one, see how it allows me just to move it over slightly. That's why I like to hold my hands here. Fingers here, I should say, because then it allows me to keep it in place and then clamp. Okay, so here they are, and let me see if you could see that. See that little piece right there? That's that little thread hanging out. So again, I use my trusty dusty lighter, and then you see that went away. So it gives it a cleaner look. It's not the end of the world for those little pieces to be hanging out, but they look raggedy, right? So by using my lighter, I can get rid of those little pieces, but again, we're not touching our seams because we don't want to take out the stitches. We just want those little strays. Okay. Did I do? This was the one that you of course could add a tag if you like. I don't necessarily add tags, but you could. Okay. Now what I did do with this one is I did burn the fabric a little bit, and notice you don't even see where it stuck out before. It's still a little crooked. So I don't like the fact that it's crooked. So again, I might call that a defect and, you know, get away with it. Okay. But here are my 4 key fobs and my lanyard. Same fabrics, same width of fabrics, 4 inches in width, same length of fabrics by the width of the fabric, which in this case for my Ankara fabric was about 45 inches wide. Usually it's about 42 inches, so you might not get 4 out of each one. So you may only get 3 and then have a scrap. You would have to play around with your fabric to see that. So it just depends. You would, do some measurements first. Don't trust that every fabric width is the same, because they're not. If you have scrap pieces left over from your wide backing, that's 108 inches wide. So it just depends. But again, usually I'm using a scrap piece of fabric that's left over from a project, and I can create these sellable moments from scraps. So hopefully for a straight lanyard, this helps out with you for the process for how to put them together. And again, these are ones that I made earlier. We made them as scrunchies. What I love about these, which is different from those, is this has elastic in it, so it doesn't have the interfacing. It gives it a different look. I love that scrunchy look. It's still a key fob, and you can adjust it on and off your hand. So if you have big hands like me and somebody makes it too small, it stretches so that you can get it on and off. With these, there's no stretch, so we have to make sure that it is wide enough to get it on and off our hand so that we can hold it like this. These can be wristlets for keys. They do come without the key ring. This part, they do come without it. This one didn't have it. I just added it for just sake for right now, just so you could see that we could add them. We could buy these separately, or we could use this as a wristlet and the hardware for a bag. So it's up to you how you want to do that, but hopefully this helps someone with figuring out how to make key fobs and lanyards, and even discussing how much this could cost to make a profit at your next craft fair. So stay tuned. I am off for spring break, and plenty of videos are coming your way. Until then, have a great day.